Okay, so welcome to the first actual content general body meeting. Thank you guys for coming. Usually how this goes is we do like a set of intro slides and then we go do some content. So these are gonna be the fun little intro slides. So we have to say this legally. We're actually a club here. If you're new, please sign in. This is how you do attendance and other things. It is very nice if you do this. I don't care if you sign.
I can't be elected. To be fair, I mean, there's not much to work on.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's just
The entire board is going up for re-election.
No, not during the spring though.
No, but this counts for spring and fall technically combined.
But if you just go to Monday,
Sort of.
legally far bylaws is fall.
Is it really just only fall?
Yeah, why couldn't you quote?
but we still have to do
Dude,
this.
every time I see 6 plus 2, I want to put 8.
Oh, okay.
So
If you're new, this is our link tree. This says every single thing that we have that's on the internet. So Discord, Instagram, website, yada yada yada. It's pretty cool. Bearcat. So we are hosting our own CTF called Bearcat CTF 2024. You all should join and participate. It's going to be held in 1819 on February 3rd at 2 p.m. We're going to be having some sponsor booths there. It is free food served at the time. If you want to stay overnight, you can. We'll have people there. Should be a pretty cool time. You should sign up and join. Announcements. We are having a Bearcat CTF Q&A session. So if you're new to CTF and you don't know what it is or you want more information on Bearcat, the Wednesday before that Saturday, we'll be having a meeting in this time and probably in here, maybe 9 here at that time. CTF, so we've got Bearcat CTF, obviously, and then we also got Rev UC going on. So Rev is a hackathon that ACM runs. That's on the 24th. And then on the 7th, we have a social event that is TBD what that is. If you weren't here last week, welcome back. It's freezing cold in Cincinnati. It's going to be like this for a month. So, yeah. News. We have news this week, finally. So a very popular VPN provider, Ivanti, is facing a mass exploitation due to 2 0 days. Over 16,800 devices were exposed. Basically, it enabled an authentication bypass and command injection. So, good for them. GitLab is releasing patches for a critical vulnerability in its email verification process. I did not know this was a thing, but apparently you could, when you say you forgot your password, you could direct it to a second email address that you could just provide to them. So that was cool. Didn't know that was a thing. They supposedly fixed that. Good to know that our entire infrastructure is in GitLab. So yeah, this is not in the past week, but over winter break there was a cyber attack on Ohio's lottery system. So I read a story. There's this guy who won $1,000 on the lottery, on Christmas Eve, and he went to go, get his money for it, and they said we can't process anything over $599. So he had to wait. So that was pretty funny. And then CISA released a report that Microsoft SharePoint Server has a elevation of privilege and vulnerability. That's all I have. Does anybody have any news that they saw the past few times? Yes.
I remember hearing something about Stuxnet. They found someone who was responsible, maybe, and it wasn't the U.S. or Israel. I remember hearing something about it.
I couldn't tell you.
Oh, the GTA hacker guy?
No, not the G.
No, I know. I'm not talking about him. Yeah, he got life in mental hospital for 60 seconds of leaked footage, and he hacked them with an Amazon Fire Stick from his apartment while being arrested.
Hey, you playing that over again? What happened?
Yeah, so the guy who did the GTA hack, he got arrested and sentenced to life in a mental hospital. And then he did it with an Amazon Fire Stick from a hotel room that was under control of the police. He was cooking. He was already under arrest while he was doing it.
He was already arrested for the hack. And so he hacked GTA servers with a fire stick.
It was like a Bluetooth vulnerability or something.
What'd you have, Cole?
Oh, yeah, so, did not know these even existed, but they're network connected wrenches.
Wrenches?
Yeah, like on floor of factories. So like, basically, it's this like Bosch piece of shit, and they created like, it's basically just ransomware but for wrenches.
I saw that.
And the problem is that like all the vulnerabilities they're using require no auth to actually get onto them, and then they just take control of a wrench. Like, it's like, what?
I saw that.
It's so good. It's just so ridiculous.
Does anybody else see any news they saw over break
Concept
at all they
of
want to
just-
share?
Like, who would even think to add like off controls to a wrench?
Apparently they need to. Okay, I think that was the last one. No, it's just- okay, cool. Okay, so today I am going to be doing a presentation on red teaming. And if you were here last semester, I mentioned this on the news, but someone figured out that you can make a C2 using a Google Calendar. So I'm going to show how that works. And it's pretty funny. Okay. So how many of you have heard about red teaming before? Cool. Someone say something that they know about red teaming. What do you think it is?
It's like you're a hacker man, but not a hacker man.
Pretty much. It's fair definition. So for those that might not be aware, there's red team and then there's blue team. So blue team is like your more stereotypical like defensive security, right? Those are other names for defensive security. I'm not going to throw them all, but basically the quote unquote the good guys, right? So they're people who like defending your organization. On the opposite side, you have the red team. So not all companies have this. A lot of companies will contract this out because they don't see a need for it. But they are essentially offensive security. So they test defensive controls by attacking. Probably be the most common name for this is penetration testing. There are slight differences between penetration testing and red teaming. Penetration testing is that one is almost entirely always contracted, like someone externally is doing it, and they have much more defined, specified way of how and what they're going after. Red teaming is kind of like, especially if you're internal, you have a lot more freedom to do whatever you want in terms of like what you're going after, especially in how you want to do it. I was on a red team for a co-op rotation this summer, and we did stuff with ATMs, so it was a different kind of security, but still security. That's for sure. Does anybody have any questions on this? I want me to elaborate a little bit more on. Cool. So what exactly do they do? So red team's main job is to emulate real threats and threat actors. So these are called tactics, techniques, and procedures. These are basically just like the tools and stuff that real attackers are using. Their goal is to try and emulate this to test their current defense controls. That includes both people and the technology involved. So your SOC, your incident response team, your security engineers, they all have to be aware and prepared in case something does actually bad happen, right? So, and not only the people, but the technology, right? So does your firewall actually do what you expect it to do? Is your endpoint protection going to catch up with some, not idiot, but some unfortunate user downloaded malware from an email, right? So you're basically just testing those and seeing if everything is good to go. Try to find gaps in defenses and change it, right? Just because you find something cool, how are you going to get that to be changed? How do you increase the user's awareness to not do that next time, or improve the technical ability of your defense team? Like I said earlier, operations usually have a defined scope. It kind of varies depending on the organization. When I was doing it, it was like we had goals as an IS organization of what we were working on, and usually that kind of aligned with what our team was going after. We were working on some cloud stuff, so the red team we did some cloud attacks as well, right? So it kind of aligns with where the organization's going. The cool thing about it is like 95% of the work is research based, so you don't have a lot of deliverables. It's more so just like, here, figure out how to break into this and do it, and it's pretty cool to do. You have to do a lot of research and figure out what already has been made and what you can make. And probably the most important part about it is you have to understand how breaking stuff actually helps the business, right? So you can say you broke into an ATM, right? But what does that mean for the greater scope of a business and how they how that affects them moving forward. How many of you have heard of the pyramid of pain? Cool. So this addresses, we'll get to why this is important later, but keep this in mind as I'm going through the presentation. This is essentially how easy it is to detect certain things related to a threat actor, right? So at the bottom, you have hash values, right? There are known malware samples out there, and you know the hash values of those. Those will not change for that malware no matter what, right? If that hash value crosses your endpoint detection system, you know right away, I know what that malware is, and that's not good, and whether it's good or bad. As you go up, it gets harder and harder to detect it, right? So IP addresses, domain names, those can change, but it takes some time to change, and they're still pretty easy to align with a certain threat actor. At the very top, you have those tactics, techniques, and procedures. So those are that's more going like the behavioral analysis type stuff, and actually looking at what's going on holistically and figuring out, okay, how can we align this to a threat actor? So keep that in mind as I go through this, because I'm going to ask you to call back on that in a bit. Another diagram, cyber kill chain. How many of you have heard the cyber kill chain before? A little bit more cool. So this is kind of, I forget who exactly, it's somewhere in the government defined this, and it's used for a lot of policy and governance stuff in cyber. So it starts with reconnaissance. This is basically just outlines the attack flow or kill chain for a cyber attack, right? So I've seen defensive teams use this to disposition alerts. So if they get if a malicious email gets sent to a user and it gets to their email protection system, they would mark that as delivery, right? Because it made it through them, through the email filter, and it got to the user. The user didn't click on it and then gets exploitation, but it's there. So that kind of just outlines that procedures. When I was on the red team, we kind of aligned our goals to this, right? So we defined, okay, how are we going to perform recon? What are we weaponizing? How are we delivering it? Who is going to be exploiting it? How is it going to be installed? How are we going to manage command and control? And then once we get command and control, it's kind of like the final stage where we're hands on keyboard and we can start the next back half of this, which is involving exfiltration and whatnot. So we're gonna, for today's sake, we're gonna focus on the command and control aspect. So I think the next slide is so command and control, also known as C2. So command and control is centralized infrastructure that allows operators to communicate and control a compromised host. So once a user downloads or malware gets on a system, however the means that may be, and it's exploited, this allows communication from the host, the infected host, back to the attacker on their remote system. There are several tools out there to accomplish this. Very common one is Cobalt Strike. Silver is a popular one. There's a ton of different open source tools that you can look at as well. There's a bunch on GitHub that say this is not for illegal purposes. Please don't do this, but you totally could if you wanted to. There's also different channel protocols. So that the channel protocols is how it communicates from the host to the remote attacker, right? So HTTPS and DNS are very common ones. However, you can also go down the rabbit hole of covert channels and doing stuff with NTP and stuffing packets. So there's a bunch of different ways to do that. Obviously, different ones have their upsides and downsides in terms of being as secret as possible. But yeah, is there any questions on command and control at a very high level there? Cool. Yes.
Is Google Calendar considered a covert channel?
I mean, maybe. It's not one of those, so it might be considered a covert channel. It's an atypical channel, I'll tell you that for sure. Okay, so here's a very basic diagram of command and control, right? So threat actor sends phishing email to user. User runs malware. Their host gets infected. That communication has to run through the corporate firewall, proxies, yada, 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 through the internet, back to the threat actor for that connection to be established. At a very high level, who sees any issues in terms of keeping the identity of the actor secret with this diagram? Yes.
You have issues trying to maintain your control.
Why?
You have to call back to an IP or
Why is that an issue? Yeah. So your IP is exposed here, right? Because if you're doing HTTPS, you're making a direct call or domain exactly. You're going through that corporate firewall, network security, all that jazz, and they're going to see, oh, that this user ran this malware connected to that IP address, that domain. Let's block the IP and domain, and boom, you're gone. You got to do it all over again.
They also be able to see your IP in the email headers when you send a phishing email.
Yes, technically yes. There are very easy ways to obscure your email so that it's not the case. Using like a general email provider is like the easiest way to do that. But yeah, that's a way to do it as well. Okay, cool. So that was the main one, right? So your IP is exposed, potential domain is exposed, and once they kick you out, you're out. You can't really do anything because you have to go through that firewall and back, right? So using Google Calendar as a C2 avoids this, right? So I'm going to do the demonstration after I run through this. So this is a tool that is found on GitHub. If you really want to go look at it, this diagram is actually on their GitHub too. So how this works is I set up a Google account and a Google Calendar, and I create a service account associated to said Google Calendar. Share that with Google Calendar, and I am essentially, yeah, okay. There's Google Calendar with a service account on it that I have connected to, right? So I have to send the user via email or something the script to run. Once they run that script, they get the call back to the Google Calendar via that service account API stuff, right? And stuff happens. I don't really know the technical side of this, right? But essentially, by using Google API, you're able to communicate back and forth with the target host using Google services, right? So why is that better than just using like HTTP for yeah?
Google Calendar's like that you can't really trace directly back to you.
Exactly. So this is what a defensive analyst would see in their supposed logs, right? So if this is a screenshot from Wireshark, not Wireshark. I actually don't know what tool this is. Yeah, but Task Manager usually doesn't have that. Anyway, some sort of security tool. You can see that the Python is running this script and is connecting out to that IP address, right? Or that domain, sorry. And you do run an NS lookup on this domain, and you get this IP address. Like, oh, okay, got them. If you type in that domain name, you go to Google, and it says 404 not found, right? So it kind of keeps you safe from any sort of blockage that way, right? So that's pretty cool. I think that's all I have for slides. I'm going to show you what it does. So any questions on this at all? Cool. For those interested, actually, I'm going to switch this now. Okay. This is really cool. Stop sharing. Share screen. Oh. I love when this doesn't work. This is so cool. Well, I'm glad you're having fun. Why is it? Which screen are you seeing? Okay, you're seeing that one. There we go. Okay, there's that. Okay, so I guess the stream's not going to see this well. That's cool. That's fine. Okay, so in case you're wondering, this is the GitHub where I got this from. If you want to look at yourself, yeah, proof of concept tool. There's actually like two very similar projects. I don't know what the difference are between them, but this one I found worked better. The instructions on how it works are there. Again, there's that cool stuff. Oh yeah, this is what you would see if you typed in that domain, right? So great, thanks for zooming in. Goes to a Google 404 page, and you type the IP address, just goes to Google, right? So dead end right there. So how does this work? So I pulled this repo down from GitHub. I did some back-end Google stuff during the org fair today to get this to work. But literally all you do is you plug and play some things, and you just run the script. Okay, so where did this go, you may ask? Well, so this screen, let's just say, is the user that downloaded this, right? Obviously, you don't. This would be automated in a sense, packaged up in some formal malware that does some whole, like disabling of endpoint detection stuff, and like wouldn't output this script. It would just be running in the background. But for this case, we'll just do this. So where does that go? Well, that goes to a Google Calendar. What? This may be or not be the CyberUC Google Calendar. I made a different calendar for it just for this though, so it's fine.
You didn't plug in our credentials.
No. So what you'll see is this ID is associated to the specific device. So if multiple users had downloaded this malware, I would have a unique ID for each individual computer. Thanks, Cole, for doing that. So what you'll see here is by default, when it establishes that connection, it runs a whoami command and returns the results in base 64. So if you take that, go to base 64 decoder, whatever, bam, right? Host name is Kali. To actually run commands on here, literally all you do is you edit the event, go to the description, clear it, run the command you want with the pipe at the end, and save it. And then if you go back here, it says executing that ls command. Send the command up for ls. It's fairly quick too. So then, boom, there you go. And if you put it there, you have the ls for the directory. Now, obviously that doesn't really do much, but you start doing some directory traversal and you can find some things, right? So I put in just a text file back at the thing, right? So if you did some directory traversal, so if you did like ls, let's look at the home directory or whatever, I guess. That's not the home directory. Look at the home directory. Is it? I don't know what it is. I'm just making things up. What is it? Yeah, that's right. I've touched Linux so much. Yeah. So, oh shit. It's fine. So this should be the home directory, right? Maybe.
Might not need slash.
Really? You don't need a slash?
I don't think so. They use it.
Okay, fine. We'll do this because I know where it is. So I have a file in the home directory that I promise is there. So literally, if I'm gonna do it the way that I'm fairly sure this should work. So the home directory is just one back, right? So, please work. You know, I tested this far and I was like, okay, I'm gonna trust my Linux skills enough to do this rest of this. Okay. Okay, so I think this is the contents of the home directory. Yeah. So this is contents of the home directory. So then you'll say, oh, look at that. There's a handy dandy little password txt there. I wonder what that is. And I mean, you can like this thing. You can even read what, Sage?
So, I guess like I'm kind of confused on like how did you get this on their computer? Like how would you put this on their computer?
It would be through a variety of delivery methods, right? So phishing email, that's probably the most common one.
So they would like get it on their computer and it's just running in the background.
Yeah, so they wouldn't download a Python script usually. It's usually be packaged in some other sort of exe DLL that would then put that stuff on the system in a way that isn't as noisy as just running a Python executable. But
And this wouldn't be on their Google Calendar. It's just on.
this is my Google Calendar. I set up for this.
They don't have access.
No,
So like
there are some flaws with this, which I'll get to.
I was gonna say, are you packaging your Google Creds as part of this product?
Yeah. So the credentials. Yeah. So in order for this to work, the credentials for the Google Calendar are part of it. So the script does need that to do. So that's one of the flaws. The other one is the endpoint tools probably are going to see the commands being run. Like if I go to history on this box, you won't see these commands being run, but that is probably getting logged in some other endpoint detection tool that is probably already there. So you're not getting away with nothing. You're kind of just avoiding the whole knowing who's actually behind it.
Yeah, it's probably running just the Python shell.
Yeah.
Functions, which technically involves-
Yeah. Well, then, hold on. And then, so you knew that thing was there. So then you can literally just do that.
Seriously? Bearcat 1819. It is a scary amount, some combination of those words. Scary amount of passwords. Like we are used to this university.
Come on. It was really trying hard to do this. There we go. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one way of doing alternate C2 channels. Again, there's definitely ways to improve this. Like Josh pointed out, like you're sending the credentials file with the in the package that contains everything. So that's once like someone finds that, you got to switch your calendar essentially. But
Or you could, if you figure it out, you could write your own, like let's say you have this thread on your system and you figure out that it's using these Google credits, you can just suddenly screw with whoever's trying to control the computer.
Yeah.
By sending them on this.
of course, that is all I had to show off for this. So it's a very straightforward thing. I just thought it was cool one to show to you guys. And like I said, like if you're in history, none of those commands I ran are in the history. But again, they're probably getting caught somewhere else in some sort of log. So you're not off free, but just if someone really didn't know what they were doing and they looked at this, then you might get away with it.
Get caught, then you won't have to suffer the consequences.
I didn't say that. Any questions about red teaming or C2s or whatever in general at all? Nothing. Cool. All right. That's all I got. If you're new and you're not verified in the Discord, come see me after the meeting so I can get you verified. Being verified allows you to join our committee channels and help out in other ways aside from just attending these meetings. Cool. That's all I got.